Good evening, and thank you all for joining us. It's time for our regular scheduled board meeting for August 7th. Tonight, I've asked Commissioner Richardson to open us with invocation and pledge, but before he does, just like everybody, to remember Sharon Higgins' family. She passed away this week. She attends our board members regularly meetings. For years, she's taken the minutes for our meeting and taken them back to the Tea Party to report to them. So just wanted to offer a prayer to her family tonight that she'll be missed.
Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this opportunity to come and just to gather and take care of the business of the county, Lord. We're thankful for the privilege to represent the people of Suwannee County, and we ask you, Lord, to help us to be wise in how we represent them. Lord, we ask you to bless the meeting tonight, Lord. Give us wisdom again, give us guidance and insight into the things that we must decide upon. And Lord, we do pray for the Higgins family, Lord, and we just ask you to be with Jewel and Lord, the whole family. Give them a sense of comfort, knowing that Sharon's in a better place. Lord, we do ask that you be with our first responders and our military, Lord, all those who stand in the gap, Lord, who put their lives on the line for the sake of others, and just keep them safe tonight, we pray. And thank you for all that you're going to do in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item on the agenda is approval of minutes from July 10th workshop, July 17th regular scheduled board meeting, July 24th joint workshop, and July 24th emergency meeting. Any questions, concerns, or changes?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Sessions, second by Commissioner Richardson. Any discussion or? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Hold on a second. All right, moving on to consent agenda. We have 2 through 12. Going to pull item 7 for discussion and item 8 for discussion. Anything else anyone wishes to pull for discussion?
Hold on, Mr. Chairman, I did see one. 6. Did you say 6?
I said 7 and 8.
Okay, 6 also.
All right, any others? Hearing none, need a motion to approve 2 through 5, 9 through 12.
Motion approved.
Get a motion to approve by Commissioner Fleming. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Richardson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, moving on back to item 6.
The reason why I was looking over the agenda and I saw, is this the one of the roads that we went and looked at?
Yes, sir.
The one that we was kind of questioned about?
Yes, the one that we had lengthy debate on at last board meeting.
Okay. All right, so we're going ahead to approve it, whatever, we're just gonna go ahead and pay them,
No choice.
but you don't have a choice to do it, but, which I wish we would've did it last time, but I just trying to find out was this the correct road.
From what I understand, from everyone I've spoke to, we're at that point where it's time to pay it. I don't think, from talking with the engineer, talking with the attorney, we don't have any means to stand and fight it.
Well, I agreed to do it the last time, and I was wondering, it was a kind of, certain thing. There's no more discussion, we just put it on the agenda. So I'm good with it, I just want to make sure it's the same with it.
Okay. Any other discussion on it? All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Richardson. Do I have a second?
I'll second this time. You gotta pay it.
I got a second by Commissioner Sessions. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, moving on to item 7, approval of amendment to contract with Black Dog Advertising. Dr. Jackson, if you would you just kind of give the board a brief update on this? And
Great afternoon. On item 7, let me just kind of give you a little background. We actually have a contract, marketing contract with Black Dog Advertising, and in that contract, they provide professional services. But when it comes to actually purchasing the social media, Facebook, Snapchat, and Twitter, basically, we were supposed to pay for that directly. The way those entities work, and this is a new area for a lot of government agencies, is that Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat does not invoice. And basically, when they provide the service, they hit your credit card and for the services, and that is the hits, the advertising, the campaign. What has been happening is that my credit card limit, and if you remember a few months ago, we came and asked you to increase it. It maxes out, when we're doing campaigns, it maxes out my credit card. Not only mine, but we've had to hit the county administrator's credit card, and it has created a problem. And when that credit card is no good, everything stops. Facebook, Snapchat,
Or the county administrator cuts you off.
or the county administrator cuts me off his card. So one of the things that we asked him to do, because we were just really in a bind, is to actually pay the costs and then invoices. And that creates a little problem because the contract that we have with them doesn't say that. So this particular amendment is so that we can pay them for, I believe it's May and June, where they actually made the payments. So going forward, Mr. Administrator, when they do this, there is a 15% administrative fee. And I've talked to Ken Williams, and we're trying to determine how to basically continue to purchase social media and not through Black Dog. And most of your public relation firms, they do that. They charge an administrative fee because basically they're going to have to reconcile that when it comes in, and we're not the only one that they're buying ads and doing work for. And so that's the situation with this. So we're asking if we can go ahead and make the amendment and to make the payment, and we still need to figure out how do we purchase media services. Ken, I don't know if you've had any luck in talking with Facebook.
I didn't hear. What did he say?
Excuse
I didn't
me?
hear what you said.
What did he say?
Did you come to the mic, Mr. Ken, or?
Contact with them, yeah, just
Okay.
trying to see if they can do a direct
I
billing.
don't think we're paying 15%.
Yeah, we're in the process of getting in touch with Google, Facebook, and all the rest of them to try to determine if we can set up a direct bill system with them. Kind of doubt it, but we're going to try that first. If that gets rejected, we'll either have to increase the credit card limit or figure out a direct draft out of our account or something.
Mr. Sessions?
Ken, I've got experience with that, with another company that we use Facebook and the other medias, and maybe I can come by your office tomorrow and explain how we do it.
Okay.
Maybe it'll help you along, and maybe be a little bit less of a charge.
Yeah, those companies are mainly electronic, so
Yeah,
hard to get them to even accept a check.
I'll come by tomorrow.
We're trying. Okay, that's good.
Thanks, sir. Did you have anything you needed to add?
I just want to add, gentlemen, that, I mean, this is a one-time amendment here. Whatever that we do come up with a fix, we'll go ahead and have a second amendment to the agreement that will reflect that going forward, once we figure out what the fix is.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
what is the cost of these 2 months when we run these campaigns? What is the average cost run?
Is it on that paper?
And as I recall, it's about $1,500.
It's about $1,500, $2,000.
Per company or
No,
total?
total,
Oh, that's not-
yeah. And it's mainly when we're doing the campaign, so we're doing like a 3-month campaign. And so you're pushing those impressions out, buying those ads and so forth.
When it becomes a problem is when we're making reservations for the FAC meetings for everyone on the board and discover that these ads are going out at the same time. And
Correct.
now the credit cards are at their limits.
Yeah.
No, any further questions?
No, sir.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Fleming. Do I have a second?
Second.
That's you, Mr. Hale. Second by Commissioner Hale. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Item number 8, approval of task order number 1 with North Florida Professional Services for work associated with the US 90 turn lanes, approximately 1,600 feet. Budget impact, DOT. Just had a question on it. Excuse me. If you go to the task order, it's number 2 on it. The errors were the original plans were provided by the engineer of record. Just a note, the engineer of record was not North Florida Professional Services. But are we going to pay for the additional time required for plan errors? That was the question.
There was a specific reason for North Florida handling some of this. There's a disagreement that exists with the engineer of record on these plans. Now, some of this really did not have to do with that disagreement, but things that were discovered out there, like the utilities. I don't know if there were utilities that were out there that no one even knew were there. And the engineering firm had done all of their research. That was part of the problem with the project, and additional time that was required to figure out how to mitigate the issue with some existing utilities that weren't supposed to be out there where these improvements were occurring. There were some other little issues that needed to be taken care of as well, some elevation problems. But the engineer of record wanted us to agree to pay them $15,000 before the project began, just to handle any little issues that might occur while construction was underway. And there was no reason to pay the engineer that designed the plans $15,000 to do that.
Okay, but how do we wind up with the errors being our responsibility, I guess is my question.
Well, I wasn't aware that, with the exception of elevation, is there some other error there? I knew about the utilities, and I knew there was an issue with an elevation issue that had to be reconciled, but I don't know beyond that about an error.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
should or could we move this forward until Mr. Bailey can come answer that? You think that'd be fair?
That's fair with me.
You have another option if you want to do it. You can direct us to try to collect it from the engineer of record that designed the plans.
Well, I feel like it's, whoever created the errors should either have an errors and omissions clause, or, especially if we paid the engineer. I don't feel like. if
Paid
there-
all but the 15,000 that they wanted for construction period services.
Now, North Florida wasn't the
They
original.
were not,
They were not the
they were
original.
not the engineering
So then
firm
really,
that did this.
waiting for Greg to explain it probably won't do us any good. Probably need to go to the original one on record.
I'd like you to pursue that avenue before we approve it, unless the board feels otherwise.
Okay, you want to authorize Mr. Pravat to assist me in my pursuit of that?
You need that in a motion?
Sure.
I make a motion to let Mr. Pravat assist you in the collection of the information to resolve this problem.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sessions, second by, was it Commissioner Richardson? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Moving on to item 14, general business. Discuss with possible board action authorizing county administrator to promote affordable housing development with interested parties, including but not limited to developers, contractors, suppliers. Did I skip 13? Well, we'll go back to 13. Mr. Harris.
I'm going to make a brief comment, and then, Mr. Chairman, I think you indicated you want to participate in this discussion as well.
I do.
Every year, the county commission, the school board, and the city of Live Oak have an annual meeting, and we discuss a number of issues that impact each of us, not the least of which is effects from growth in the county. And every year that I've participated in those meetings, and for those who have attended those, we hear the same thing, that there is a deficiency in housing in Suwannee County. That's always been the case since I've been here. A deficiency. Now, this says affordable housing development, and I don't want you to be confused with government subsidized housing, okay? This is just housing in general. There's a significant deficiency throughout the county. The chairman and I were in a meeting a week or two ago, and this very topic came up. And I indicated in the meeting that if the board authorized me to, I'd be glad to try to add that to the list of things that I'm working on and see if I can't try to encourage more affordable housing, or housing that is affordable within Suwannee County. I mean, clearly, a part of the problem here, if you simply compare the price for housing in Suwannee County, site-built construction, to counties with larger populations, you will discover that part of our problem is the difference in the volume of units that are being constructed. When there are a lot more units being constructed, there are discounts to contractors that they can pass on to customers, discounts from suppliers that can be passed on to customers. So that's having an impact on us. But in any event, if the board has an interest in county commission participating in trying to change what we've all been talking about for the last 8 years, I'll be glad to participate in that.
Okay, any comments or questions or anything regarding? I know we've talked about it quite a bit, me and Mr. Harris. Is there any way that we can, anything we can do to assist developers or to incentivize them the way we've tried to incentivize businesses to come in? Because, I mean, that's one of the things we're missing with attracting new businesses is rooftops. Is there a way or anything that we can do to make it Suwannee County a better suit for them?
Asking me, Mr. Chairman?
I am asking you.
Thank you. One of the problems, you typically and what our statutory purpose is with economic development, and economic development included in the definition is not residential development. Historically, when you have commercial development, which is included in economic development, you have commercial, and it includes jobs, which is the real driving force behind economic development. And residential development doesn't have that drive in a permanent basis for jobs. So we are going to have to look to be otherwise creative to come up with, a way to be able to work with them. It is certainly within your purview to be able to look at the circumstances in the county and recognize, as long as we fall, and follow through, saying that we recognize we fall short here, this is how we get, and as a preamble, or what we need to help kick off economic development is to have this residential housing, to be able to make this attraction. We can go through and then double back and call it residential development, a public purpose. But that's what you have to have, is you as a board recognize that whatever we are trying to incentivize or trying to create ends up as a public purpose, and in the end creates that economic development. And that's how I would go about doing it. I don't think there's an avenue out there directly, whether it be, statutorily approved under 125 or under our economic plan that we have developed at this point to be able to do that. But if we back up and look at all of the factors that do combine to make it a totality of economic development, and as long as we outline them all, we can find that public purpose. And that would be for y'all to decide, that with all of those stages, it would be a public purpose.
Yes, sir.
I think we come up with a scoring system similar to what we have to attract businesses. It'll have a lot of other things to look at, like, are there septic tanks involved? Are there, is there detention ponds involved? A lot of things with development that every piece of land is different. But if we can come up with some type of a scoring mechanism that will give, maybe give them more points for not having septic tanks and hooking up to a sewage system and, things like that. Maybe we can come up with something like that that'll make it more beneficial to a builder to want to do that.
Got a question, Mr. Pravat. From what I'm hearing you say, that we need to go back and kind of look at what we think our shortfalls are that are kind of hindering economic development, and what we think we can do in certain areas to get us where do we want to be economic development.
Well, I think at this point, Mr. Chairman, we have had several economic studies done in the past that have all recognized that one of the shortfalls for our county is not having available housing, whether it be temporary housing, whether it be rental housing, or housing for new workers that we're trying to attract. And when you combine all of those things together, that's one of the recognized problems that we have. And I think if we can go back and, as a board, recognize those and come up with a program to be able to do that, and it can end up being a function of public purpose. One of the problems, and why it's typically not recognized, residential development is not recognized as economic development, is one, the association with jobs. Temporary jobs are created, but not on the far end where they want permanent jobs, related. So, and then when you have residential units that are being constructed, residential units are more of a driver for having to provide additional services rather than a commercial development, commercial development has limited services that needed to be provided to it, such as fire and, sheriff's protection, those types of things. So that's why it becomes on the other end, of the spectrum. Now, I think we can all recognize that we need help getting over here, and that if it's a block for us to be able to get there, that we need to be creative in removing that block so that we can put it as part of the economic package with the recognized information that we already have, so that we can base that, that finding on those studies and things that we've already had done to be able to create a program. But I think, it's not one of these things that we can just say that we recognize it right now, but I think we need to have it so that we have a program set that recognizes it, so we can do it all at once.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
as I go around in the county, I see that there is an issue with public housing. And I think all that all tie in together with what we're talking about here. Our public schools, our economic development, if jobs were provided, where would the individuals live? I've had discussions with some individuals when they were looking at coming to Suwannee County, said, well, you don't have a great choice of public housing. Then you don't have the job. You don't have the quality of jobs. I was coming from Alachua County to High Springs about a month ago, and I saw all these houses, these housing projects, these houses, rooftops, how they were outlined. I said, wow, if they were in Suwannee County and we had that quality of jobs, then these people that would give us more rooftops. And I'm somewhat like Mr. Vat. We got to have a avenue to where, how do we get there with these housing development, with economic development, with the quality of jobs, whether anybody would purchase them, they would say what would be the price of the home. There's a lot of factors out there that may be a hindrance, but we don't know until we try.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just a thought occurred to me that, and I may be off base, but I think I'm pretty close to it. Anything that we do in this arena can be problematic. When we encourage economic growth with jobs, businesses move, we're not putting children in schools. We're not moving families into, that's going to put a larger burden on our school system and such. We're going to bring people in here to work, and that's great. They may live in a different county. They may live in our county. But if we start incentivizing in some way, or considering incentivizing developers to come in to develop property that's possibly taken away from some ad valorem taxes, we're putting more and more strain on our county to continue to offer services that we're having harder time doing, at least for that temporary time frame. If we do it in a similar way that we're doing with businesses, then I think that becomes potentially problematic. However, on the other hand, I don't believe that we can ignore the problem. But we need a balanced approach. We need an approach that involves education, bettering our education, as well as bringing residents in and the jobs. And I think we're doing well on the jobs. Now we just need to get the other pieces of the puzzle in there, but we need to do it smartly.
Okay. Only thing I'm not following you on was, you said taking property off the tax?
No. I said if we do it in a similar way where we incentivize our businesses to come into our county, we're taking some of our ad valorem taxes.
I'm not, that ain't the way what I'm looking for. I was just wondering if there's what different avenues we do have, what choices we do have. If there are, and there may not be anything we can do, but if there's any roadblocks that we have in the way now, we need to remove them. It may not be that we offer anything, it may be that we do. It may just be that we can speed up certain processes. I don't know, but I would like for us to authorize Mr. Harris to at least look into it and for us to promoting the other side of economic development. You got the job creation side. Dr. Jackson's working on that on a regular basis. If you're bringing people into work, you got to house them somewhere. And if you're bringing them into work and they're making $30,000 or $40,000 a year, but they're going to Columbia County and buying houses and subdivisions there, you're losing that portion of your ad valorem tax base just as well, and that's just as big a portion of it as the businesses that are building here.
And, Mr. Chairman, and what you end up doing is you end up chokeholding other businesses that do want to come in because
Yeah.
just what you're saying.
And if you bring them, if you transport them into work, but you send them home and into another county,
Correct.
they're taking your tax dollars back and they're
taxes
going
back.
to the restaurants in that county and they're buying gas in that county.
And I do understand that, especially with this interstate and these utilities that we're putting in, that would be a good opportunity at that point to start looking at housing development out there. Potentially, it could be a good fit for it. So, but again, I think that it requires a really long, good, insightful look at this to make sure that we're doing it right and that we're covering all the bases. It's not just about housing alone.
All right, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
do we know if there's any other counties, Mr. Harris or council or yourself, that has done anything like this for development? Some type of a model?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Mr. Pratt may, but I'm not.
Okay,
Okay, I was
okay,
gonna,
fantastic.
Great afternoon. I really applaud the county administrator and the county commission for basically taking the lead. And let me just kind of share with you my experience. And the end results was that we built 5,500 new homes, affordable homes, only 2 defaults in 5 years. And we created, there are a lot of moving pieces. And I think that the county commission needs to be on the bandwagon, but there are other players that has to be involved. We created a nonprofit called Affordable Housing by Lake. And that nonprofit, I forced all 14 banks to own that nonprofit. Basically, they created a lending box. Challenge with affordable housing is individuals stepping into ownership. The down payment, surveys, the appraisals, they don't have the dollars to actually step into. So that's where SHIP and some of the other funds come into play. The other piece that has to happen is that individuals that have not been homeowners, they need to be trained. So you have to have a training component. You have to have a component that's going to clean up their credit as a part of this becoming an affordable homeowner. Basically, the bankers have to come together and agree that the box, the lending box, cannot be the same lending box that conventional borrowers use, because most of these individuals have credit problems, they don't have financial strength, and so basically you have to do something different there. On the other end is that the surveyors and the appraisers, instead of them making $350, they should agree to make $150, and that's what we got. We got the appraisers, the surveyors, basically to cut their costs, because this helps with stepping in to the ownership. The other piece is that we met with the builders. And so we designed 25 homes, renderings, one time. And those individuals that went through the program could decide which rendering they want. So it could be a 3-bedroom, but it could be rendering A. It could be a 2-bedroom, but it could be rendering A. So remember, these are all the costs that goes into building a new home. So you create this form. So if you're going to, as the board, going to allocate dollars, you allocate dollars to create those renderings. I'm just giving an example. The other piece of that is that the cities and the counties had lands that was vacant, that each year they would take because of code enforcement. Those properties actually was donated. And so what happens is that those individuals basically go and pick their land. And so all of this the whole intent was to reduce the costs of stepping into home ownership. When it comes to public housing, what we found is that individuals that were in public housing is on a sliding scale. So as they make more money, their rent goes up. What we found that there were individuals that were living in public housing that could really be paying a mortgage, which was less than what they were paying in public housing. And so at the end of the day, I think there are other players. The bankers are big players because you can do all the incentivizing in the world, but if their box won't let those individuals get a mortgage, or if we don't have a process that helps them clean up their credit to make them mortgageable, if we don't train new homeowners what are, the responsibility of a home, all of that is in part of the process of helping them to be successful. We had one individual, actually I had one individual that I wanted to participate in the affordable housing program. And so one of the things that I did with my home in Lake County was I did a what they call a lease to purchase. And so what happens is as they are leasing that year or 2 year, a portion of their dollars is going towards the down payment of land. So we did this with this person that had never owned a home before, and a storm came along and the tree fell and on the roof, and they called us and they said, well, what are you going to do? No. You now own the home. You have home. And so a part of that training program really teaches people what home ownership really is. And so it's much more comprehensive, and I don't think you can incentivize this. I mean, it's a lot of moving pieces, but I think as the Board of County Commissioners, I think you can call the bank presidents to the table, you can call the builders to the table, and basically say this is one of our priorities, and how can you all help us make this work?
If I might, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I don't disagree with what Mr. Jackson said, and there are a number of programs that have been developed around the state in that vein. But I think what we're talking about is something a little bit different, and I think it comes with what you're talking about. Like Mr. Harris talked about affordable housing. Well, affordable housing now has kind of a definition that people understand, but we're not really talking about affordable housing. Like Mr. Fleming mentioned, well, it's public housing. Well, it's not public housing as you understand the definition, to be now, but what we're trying to target is have housing that is out in the public that is affordable. And so
Not
and
subsidized
and not
housing.
subsidized housing in any way. There are a number of things that government agencies can do anyway, and one of the things that specifically just jumps in is you have a target area that of the county, or even around an urban area that you would like to have urban infill in, so that and you designate that area to be a place where permit fees are waived, during a period of time. Or that if you have other services that are available, if we had a sewer line or a water line, be able to, be close to that so they'd be hooked up, you can incentivize people by not having to pay those hookup fees or, those types of things. And those things are available now. And how we put them into a program is one thing, but how do you get past that so that somebody will want to come get that piece of property that is not owned by the county, but is owned by a landowner that has had it for 50 years, and it's abuts the city limit, and nobody's ever going to build on it because that owner has no incentive, to build on it. And so that's the type of thing that I'm thinking of, because those houses, you attract them, you give them other incentives, and then provide them with services, but they are limited service. I mean, they're not as expensive services as if it was a subdivision that would be out in O'Brien. Having to render services out there is more costly than it is up here, closer. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to come up with a program to be able to do that. Or at least the idea is, because we've received so many inquiries about housing and the non-availability of housing as an economic driver for us. And so that's what we're trying to come up with that. But if that's, and what we're here today to talk about is whether or not you really want us to spend the time to pursue that.
Right.
When you're having Mr. Harris look into this, you're having him take away time and responsibilities from something else. You're having me assist him on some of those things. It costs y'all money, to do that, So, that's the kind of thing that we want to look at. Is it something that you want to make an investment in, as an economic driver, for the county?
Mr. Chairman, can I make a quick comment?
Yes, sir.
In my mind, it's imperative. We've done the same thing for the last 7 or 8 years that I've been hearing it, and we've got the same results. If we're satisfied with these results, we don't need to do anything. We've already figured out how to do what we're doing and get these results, which is nothing, the same thing we've always done. Part of the problem that we experience here was the same problem that we experienced with economic development before we started marketing. No one knew that we were on the map. If you drive down to Newberry right now, look at the development that's going on down there.
I saw it.
Are they on the map?
Oh, yeah.
In a big way. And that's just in the last year and a half. They've been blowing it out and selling all those units. How many developers that build in volume know that we're even on the map? That becomes an encouragement to local builders. When they see volume building, they then start changing their building practices, their business model. Because of competition. Competition is good, right? Look at the real estate listings. Everybody's competing with each other, trying to sell something. But the reality is, if you pick up, there are magazines all over the state of Florida that you can pick up today where builders and developers list the square footage price of their homes. And a lot of those nice homes are 30, 40% less than the quotes you get in this county today. Why is that? It's because there isn't any volume going on here.
No competition.
So I think that part of what needs to occur is we need to get our message out that we'd like to have housing in the marketplace that is affordable. Now, one thing that needs to occur that's helpful, that's worked in other locations, is the issue of land use and densities on properties. It is a good idea to have some development closer to the urban area. One good reason is the availability of some utilities. Now, we still got to see if we can do something with the city. I recognize that, but when you can increase your densities, not everyone wants to live on 5 acres, okay? A lot of people want to live on a quarter acre. Well, is that quarter acre going to be less in cost than the 5 acres or the 20 acres that's currently available? It depends. It depends on curb and gutter and stormwater retention and lots of other things. But if they can reduce the cost of transportation every day, we've got over 200 people right now working in Suwannee County at the prison that live in Columbia County that drive over here every day. You think those people like making that drive? No. But I think we need to get our message out. We need to talk to banks. We need to talk to suppliers. We need to talk to developers. We need to talk to contractors. I mean, we just need to get the message out that we're in the marketplace, try to change things in this county, to help the people that live here and those that want to live here, that want to bring business here. One thing I thought about was not necessarily the ones that have been living in apartments that Dr. Jackson was talking about, but these kids that come out of college today that want to get married and they want to work for a year or two and then try to buy a home. They don't have any established credit. That goes back to the whole credit issue. I mean, I had this conversation with someone the other day that was just complaining. Some young people, they were complaining. You know, we went to all these banks, and every one of them said they couldn't loan us money because we have no history of credit. You know, so there are lots of issues that we can potentially help with without coming up with a big incentive program and portray that we're trying to give something away. One thing that is advantageous in this county to the people that are here, the people that want to build a home, is that we do not have impact fees. You know, we don't have transportation impact fees and water and sewer impact fees and all these other impact fees that a lot of counties do. So we're attractive in that regard. Makes us a little more competitive. But there's just a number of things we can do. I put it on the agenda after talking to the chairman. In fact, I'd spoken to Mr. Pravat about it. If the board wants us to incorporate that into some of our other responsibilities and see if over time, this isn't an overnight issue, but over time we might be able to change this, and there's no better time to consider it than when the economy is going great. So with the economy becoming much more robust, this would be a good time if the board's ever going to consider trying to change what's going on out there, us try to pay a little attention to it and see what we can do.
Any questions? Mr. Hancock?
I'm kind of concerned.
Who are you? And where do you live?
Sorry. Bo Hancock, 6135 Wiggins Road. First and third Tuesdays, I'm here. I'm concerned from a taxpayer standpoint. What we're talking about is fine, housing. The government didn't help me when I bought my property and bought a mobile home.
I think you're getting off track there, though. We're not looking to help people buy them.
No. But what you're talking about is you're going along. If the jobs are here, the people will move here. Okay? You've got to have a workforce also, which requires the education system to change. Y'all have all, this is kind of like Pandora's box. When you open the lid and all the moths and everything else start fluttering out, it gets bigger and bigger in the path of unintended consequences. But the program that Dr. Jackson was talking about, somewhere along the line, there were taxpayer dollars, seed money somewhere to get that going. There was a public-private relationship. Now, how much of the public are you going to involve? I mean, it's one of these things where it's a need, but how far down that path do you want to go to try and get people? It's the carrot and the stick again. You want the mule to pull the wagon, put the carrot on it and the stick, and he never reaches it, but he keeps trying. You got to find the carrot. We don't have the carrot. We don't have the infrastructure. We've got to come up with a plan that will incorporate all of these things, which is part of what you're talking about. But how much involvement is the government going to have? It would be nice if we could all afford it and say, yeah, we're going to build a subdivision of 100 homes and rely on Dr. Jackson here to fill them up with a big company moving in. It'd be nice to have Amazon locate out here. But there would be a lot of headaches to go along with that. I don't believe it's going to happen right away. But we can always hope. But that's my concern, is be very careful of committing tax dollars that we don't have. You're getting ready to go into budget workshops. And if you had all the money in the world, it'd be one thing, but you better be looking close. And where you going to carve out additional monies, what are you going to have to forego if you do have to help?
If I came across that that's what I'm advocating for, is us cutting out additional monies, I apologize to you right now. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about completely moving out any roadblocks that the county has and marketing that we are here. We're advertising every day that we're open for business. I mean, we just spent $60,000 on a website with the TDC to bring in tourism. But, and part of this overall plan is not just businesses. If you're going to sit there and start this plan, you need to initiate a plan of where you're going to put them when they do come. And I don't want us to get so far down this road that we're playing catch-up on this road of the housing. I'm not advocating that we're going to start doling out tax dollars to bring them here. That ain't what I'm getting at. I just want us to try to make sure that if there is anything that we can do better, that opens us up to a broader market, that we do it. But I'm not advocating that we give them your money.
Well, if you waive a permit fee, inspector's still going to go out and inspect. That's revenue that you give away if you waive the permit. It's been done in the past, and it seems to have worked. It's been on a very small scale. But these are things that when you open the door, you don't know what else might be wandering in. You have all the good intentions in the world, but this is one that I think you better, I would hope that you're going to think long and hard on, and look very closely at it. I understand there's a need. If the housing isn't here, you got to determine what kind of housing you want. You want developers to come in, but why would a developer want to come in and spend his money if he can't sell the houses? There's nothing, you've got to have something here, it ties right back. It's one of these, kind of a big circle. And a friend of mine that used to be race on dirt tracks, he said, all you got to do is get a car that'll go fast and turn left. And
You're
keep
right.
going. And that's what you end up doing. You end up chasing yourself. And that's what scares me with this.
Well, I didn't mean to scare you tonight. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
You scare me the first and third Tuesdays, you scare me
Yes, sir.
every time.
I'll bring you a
And I
value.
come in for it.
I agree with everyone here tonight. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I do agree with that. But, you mentioned Amazon. Amazon's not coming without
Oh, no.
people here. You know what I'm saying? So we do need to do something like this. We need to at least reach out and let someone do some research and find out what we can do. I mean, it's worth having a conversation. It's worth looking into it. And I agree. I mean, we've done nothing.
And that may be nothing that we need to do.
That's right.
But if we don't look at it, you don't know.
That's it. I'm not telling you not to look at it. I just urge you to be cautious.
Sure.
That's all.
We'll be very cautious. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
I'll watch.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
sir.
I would add that any conversations that we have or any research that's done involve Dr. Jackson as well in this process, because he's got a lot of background in growing communities, and I think that's we would be remiss to excuse him out of it.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I also would like to add again, I commend you and Mr. Harris for bringing this to the table. I have saw this and like I said, my travel, and I see these houses. I know it's Alachua County, Newberry, Hot Springs, and these areas on 27, and these houses were not there a few years ago, but these houses are there. People live in these houses. I do think that it would be a challenge if we could get something on that note that we can have in place, because surely it's going to come one day.
Yeah.
And it's better to be prepared than not prepared for it.
And I can tell y'all, just from the workforce we have now, we don't have adequate housing.
Yep.
Being in the rental business and dealing with real estate, there's phone calls nonstop every day to the real estate offices, people looking for a place to rent, and everybody's full. You go try to rent a 3-bedroom, 2-bath right now at a reasonable rate in a nice area. It's hard.
I said we gotta move
Chairman.
forward.
Yes, sir.
You know, I want to say something only because this issue of tax dollars came up. I want to give you some real live examples of what does occur, what has occurred in conversations that I've had. And this isn't giving tax dollars away. Some of you remember when the county was in a lawsuit with Mr. Treadway over Suwannee Landing. He had proposed this big development with very large parcels, and everybody could park an airplane in their garage. Well, it was obvious that we were going to lose that lawsuit because the county commission made a horrible mistake in the decision they'd made. And this board wasn't in place at that time. So let me just qualify the statement by saying that. But I think everyone knew the county was going to lose. In any event, I had a conversation with Mr. Treadway, and I asked him to hold on to that development. He indicated to me that he was planning to sell the property, and I said, why don't you hold on to the property and replat the property and try to get utilities from the city? Instead of doing these 3 and 4 and 5 acre parcels, just go in there with do a mixed unit development where you've got some multifamily and some quarter-acre lots and some larger ones. He said, Randy, I think that might be a great product, but I'm tired. I just don't want to mess with it anymore, and he went away. But there was great opportunity there. There's a different owner now, and I've spoken to that owner about doing something similar to that. And recently, the owner came up and sat down with Mr. Pravat and I and started the conversation up again. That's been over 2 years ago probably since I spoke about it. There's an opportunity where we can participate in assisting someone and just sharing with them what some of these products look like in other locations and how to get there from here. And what I mean by that is, how long does it take us to facilitate a comp plan amendment to increase the densities in a residential development? It takes us about 90 days to take care of the comp plan amendment, depending on the size. If it's a large scale, it takes longer. If it's a small one, it takes about 90 days. That and the accompanying zoning. There are lots of people that have no idea how to do that. Where do you start and how long is it going to take? But those are just examples of things that we could do to facilitate people that want to consider development in here. Dr. Jackson brought me a gentleman that represented a group that wanted to consider doing some housing here about a year or two ago. They, ultimately didn't make a decision to develop in Suwannee County. But the opportunities are there, and if we get the message out that we are opening the door to those opportunities. The door exists. We're just not maybe doing some of the things that we could do. So, but I don't want to spend time on any of it unless the board agrees that that's what we need to be doing to try to accommodate some of these potential companies that know that they've got to bring their workforce in some cases with them, or at least part of it, or these corporate people come through. They drive through, and where are they going to live? They keep on driving. So that was the question. All I need is a nod one way or the other.
If there's, anybody else have any questions, comments? What's the wishes of the board? Y'all wish to give Mr. Harris the green light to start promoting and look into different ways to promote it?
I do. I'll promotion that we do.
I got a motion by Commissioner Fleming,
A second.
got a second by Commissioner Hill. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do. I think I would want to qualify this. I would like to see, instead of it just being a blanket approval to go talk to developers, that we have actually more of a defined a purpose behind this that involves research, it involves understanding the whole issue, it involves reaching out with economic development, even possibly the school board getting involved in
the considerations, obviously, more residents means more kids in school, especially when you start reaching out into young families. We can overwhelm our system in some areas and then underwhelm them in other areas. So I think it's part of a broader solution and not just looking at one specific part of it. So I would ask that we qualify this a little bit. I mean, I know what you want to do, and I know when you get out and talk to developers, they're going to give you a lot of information. But I think that if we drive the purpose towards getting prepared for a future plan that we're moving towards, I think that's a better use of our time and our resources.
I'm not sure I know what that means, but if you want research done, let Dr. Jackson do it. If you want a job done, I'll do it.
Nothing.
I know how to talk to developers and landowners and people that call my office on a regular basis. I know how to steer them in the direction they need to go to accomplish what they're hoping to accomplish. And that doesn't need to be our purpose, but theirs if they're interested in developing. And when Dr. Jackson brings people, I know how to handle that. But I don't want to be doing it if the board isn't interested. And that really is the point here. Anything that we can do to curtail our message in that once-a-year meeting, I think, is a good thing. I don't want to get bogged down in a bunch of research and study and developing studies because we're at a point where we don't even need that. We know we have a flat tire. We don't have to study that.
Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, I got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Fleming authorizing the county administrator to promote affordable housing development interested parties. I got a second by Commissioner Hill. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
All right, moving back up to staff reports, item 13, Dr. Atwin Jackson, Economic Director.
Once again, Alvin Jackson, Economic Development. This evening, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be semi-brief. I want to basically show you the two marketing videos that, one on the tourist development side as well as the economic development. And, you know, we just finished that discussion about housing, and hopefully tonight the press will say something about this board's step towards trying to address the housing, because from an economic development standpoint, that really helps. Because one of the challenges that we have here is that, you know, we have cheap land, and we have good location, the best location in the state, but the issue is housing. Let me just tell you that HACO over in Lake City basically was supposed to create about 1,000 new jobs, and they came here. They even talked to Klausner about, you know, housing development, whether or not they could partner. They have since basically withdrawn almost half of the project because of lack of housing. And so it is really a challenge that we have as it relates to economic development. And if you remember the land use designation, the employment centers includes a statement about limited housing, because it's with the understanding that if you're going to grow industry in those areas, you need to provide for housing. So I shared with City of Live Oak and others the statistics right now show that almost 60% of the residents here in Live Oak rent. When you look around, you don't see any apartment buildings, which would pay tax dollars. So where are they renting? This may get me into trouble, but they're renting mobile homes on acreages and so forth. And that is not creating any tax dollars. I think our statistic in the county is like 30% of individuals of our population rent. That's a concern from an economic development standpoint. So I want to, once again, thank you all for addressing the issue. And I think from an economic development standpoint, it makes a big statement about this county commission. Okay. So the first one is the tourist development website. You probably have, if you have not seen it, go to visitsuwannee.com. We have over 100,000 views on that. Go ahead.
Is a treasure waiting to be discovered. Perhaps you've heard of the river that inspired our state song. We're Suwannee County, where taking it fast or slow is always the right tempo. We've got swimming holes so fresh and clear you can see forever. Our daily commute is a lot less stressful. And if you get into a jam out here, that's a good thing. It's about freewheeling with the family or blazing new trails while rediscovering old ones. It's about satisfying your appetite and discovering that likes and shares are even better in person. Sometimes it's about what lies below the surface, while other times it's about who's right beside you. And at the end of each extraordinary day, you'll find some of our best accommodations offer a lot more than 5 stars. Visit Suwannee County, Florida, and discover the nature of things.
So this is a product of the Tourist Development Council. They authorized and the TDC staff and the marketing firm to actually produce this. This is getting just so many eyes are looking on this. As I said, it's over 100,000 views. So the next one is the economic development one. As we are working on the I-75 County Road 136, we wanted to really highlight that area as well as Suwannee County as a place to consider doing business. And this is going out also.
Welcome to Suwannee County, Florida's new frontier. People travel from all over the world to visit Florida. Everyone knows about the white sand beaches, palm trees, golf courses. But Florida is a beautifully
Those
diverse
beaches
state
around the lake
with a lot
out
to
there.
offer your
Yeah.
business and your employees. There are only a few places left in Florida that are within a short driving distance of world-class amenities tourists seek, while also providing a quiet lifestyle and quick access to the entire southeast region. One of these rare places is Suwannee County, Florida's new frontier. Conveniently located approximately 1 hour from Jacksonville, Gainesville, and Tallahassee, Florida, and Valdosta, Georgia, Suwannee County blends the love of small-town living with metropolitan opportunities, giving residents the best of both worlds. At its heart, Florida is a state of agribusiness, manufacturing, distribution, and easy access to the ports for exporting as well as importing. Because of the high volume of tourists each year, Florida has invested in a remarkably efficient interstate road system. Suwannee County is located at the ideal intersection of 2 of Florida's interstate arteries, I-75, Miami to Canada, and I-10 from the Atlantic to the Pacific coasts. Suwannee County is home to a forward-thinking local government and population who would like to see clean and responsible growth. We are looking for small to medium-sized business owners interested in making Suwannee County their home. Our communities of Live Oak, Wellborn, Branford, and Dowling Park are family-centered, faith-oriented, and want to preserve our beautiful natural resources. We have 7 distinct areas within the county we are looking to develop, called employment centers. In each of these locations, we are specifically interested in businesses looking for a distribution location with warehouses and quick access to the interstate network. We have available land near the interstate, which is ideal for manufacturing and distribution across the Southeast. Our low-traffic proximity to interstate arteries and rail allows for streamlined logistics to major markets of Atlanta, Miami, and Jacksonville. Our ease of access to several deep-water ports also makes us an ideal location for exporting or importing products to other countries. We are also seeking developers for multi-unit dwellings and hotels to serve the travelers entering Florida from the west, as well as serving the hundreds of thousands of visitors to one of the country's most popular outdoor music parks and festival grounds, Spirit of the Suwannee Music Park. Our slice of Florida is still relatively undisturbed. Suwannee County is surrounded by the historic Suwannee River, and we have one of the highest concentrations of beautiful freshwater springs in the country. We'd love to invite businesses to relocate to Suwannee County who want to participate in agribusiness, ecotourism, and other industries that prioritize conservation and responsible stewardship of our natural resources. We are excited to develop long-lasting relationships with businesses interested in seizing the opportunities of settling down in Suwannee County, Florida's new frontier.
So those are two digital marketing pieces that's getting out there. So Suwannee is becoming known, and just kind of want to share that with you. I just want to briefly talk about the incentives. Just keep it before you. It's performance-driven. This board approved a total of about 13. Approved about a total of 13 incentive packages. And I just kind of want you to see the return on investment, and I'm just going to talk about this year. 2018, 2019, the recommended rebates summary. This year, we will be rebating to 3 companies in the total amount of $604,778. Those projects have created over $600,000 in new capital investment, about $1.8 million in new taxes, created 392 jobs. What a return on investment. So, for every dollar that you invest in incentives, you get $172.
Thank you.
I need my money back.
$1 investment, this is what we get in return on investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it? That's it. Thanks, sir. Moving on to general business, back to general business. Item 15, discuss with possible board action, a new proposal from Darabia and Associates regarding the wastewater treatment. Randy Harris and County Attorney Jimmy Pravat. Whoever wants to go first, have at it.
I'll go ahead and take a stab at this. Under the statutes, there's a process that we have to follow to procure engineering services, and we followed that process. It essentially says that you advertise for qualifications for engineers, and you score the engineers, and then you, after you've ranked them, you pick the highest one out and try to negotiate a price for services. And if you cannot come to an agreement on the price of services, you stop negotiations, you end there, you move on to the next engineering firm, and you cannot go back to the first one. That's a process that's outlined in Florida statutes and the Competitive Negotiation Act. Clearly, it's different than the way we operate in the private sector. No one would operate like that in the private sector. In fact, I personally think that the engineering lobby probably got that law put into place. because you wouldn't select someone and then ask them what they're going to charge. In the private sector, you'd know what they were going to charge before you made the selection. But be that as it may, we followed the process. In the advertisement for utilities engineers, we indicated that we would most likely select 2 engineering firms because we had 2 projects going concurrently. And we had 3 engineering firms respond to our request for qualifications. We selected the highest 2. North Florida Professional Services was awarded the project or a general agreement. And let me elaborate on this just a little bit. Even with our road construction engineering, we have a general agreement with an engineer, and then with each project that we do, we issue a task order, which we bring back to the board to let the board entertain either approving or rejecting. So the pricing is established in the task order with a delineation of the scope of services that's expected. And that's what we did with North Florida in the case of the water tower. Well, when negotiations began with Darabi and Associates, Mr. Darabi came in, met with me, and proposed a charge of $865,000 for engineering and associated services for the design and plans to build the sewage treatment plant. At the time, I communicated that I felt that that was quite excessive, and I shared with him some of my experiences in another county where I'd worked quite extensively with utilities and told him what I thought that it should cost. It was a whole lot less than $865,000. As I continued to have conversations with him, I eventually got to the point where I invited Mr. Pravat to just come sit in on those conversations. And we were getting to the point where we needed to bring something to the board for consideration. And prior to that occurring, we met in my office on a Monday before the board meeting and emphasized the importance of going ahead and making a decision on a rate that I could bring back to the board. That rate was ultimately decided upon. It was $405,000. It was an all-inclusive rate, lump sum, and we brought it to the board on the next day, Tuesday. We had already had it listed on the agenda, even though we didn't have the backup information when we prepared the agenda. But I shared at the time that we had a price of $405,000, and I would return with a detailed task order at a later date, but that we needed the approval because we could approve the general agreement and then come back with the detailed task order later. In the motion included language that appears, at least in the minutes, that there was a combination of those two that were approved by the board to go ahead and move forward with the agreement and the price of $405,000. What occurred after that meeting was a communication from myself to Mr. Darabi that we needed to have the exhaustive detail of all of the services that would be rendered, because this is a reimbursement grant. We pay the costs up front for services that are typically billed as a percentage of completion of the delineated scope of services, but you have to have that all broken down into deliverables as a percentage of completion so that we can reconcile that with the invoicing and ultimate request for reimbursement. Mr. Darabi assured me that he would get me that information, and the request continued for several weeks. In your packet, you have information that indicates that on July the 28th, give me a second to find mine. I had it here a moment ago. On July the 28th, which was, I believe, a Saturday, I received an email on June the 18th. The board approved the $405,000. I was still asking for the detailed list of deliverables, and by July the 28th, Saturday, a week prior to this past Saturday, I received an email from Mr. Drabi, and it had two addendums in it, two proposals. One that he calls Addendum 1 was to simply provide the engineering services on the plant itself at $350,000, and another here for $125,000 to design the piping system for the collection to the properties. So that now jumps the cost up to $475,000, which is different than what he had agreed to and signed prior to that. I'm going to back up for a second, share something with you. Early on, because Mr. Drabi was working with me on different aspects of the grant paperwork, the application, and then ultimately some evaluation of potential sites, I came to the board with a task order, I think it's in the amount of $55,000, for some of that upfront work. And the reason I did that was for the purpose of ensuring that we had an agreement and a cost associated with it for that upfront work, even if we could not later come to an agreement on the cost of engineering of the plant, okay? So we have that earlier task order of $55,000. And I wanted to point that out because when Mr. Pravat and I met with Mr. Drabi and we discussed the $405,000, it included that 55. Okay? So it wasn't 405 plus 55,000. That earlier agreement of 405,000 included all of that earlier upfront legwork and everything that was involved. So here a week ago this past Saturday, a week earlier, I get an email saying, essentially, I've conducted more evaluation. I'm offering you two proposals. I'll do the plant for $350. I'll do the piping system for $125. And that $125,000 proposal included not only the piping system for the sewage treatment plant, but it included a proposal to do the piping design for the water distribution from the water plant, which we had already awarded to North Florida Professional Services as part of their scope of services. So that wasn't even an option. But the price had jumped up to $475,000. That's what he was offering. And then, after that date, on August the 2nd, this past Thursday, I got another email where he's talking about our conversations on the telephone, and he's still working on the proposal. And he sent me a new proposal on August the 2nd. When he sent that, I received essentially an outline of a lump sum engineering fee of $475,000, and then it goes into language speaking of the preliminary plans and the grant application and all the upfront work, and he's got a $55,000 figure next to it.
And I might remind Mr. Harris at that point, that was after an hour-and-a-half conversation of us sitting there trying to pull the information on what the 405,000 deliverables would be that he had agreed to,
Right.
so that we would have deliverables to bill.
I'm trying to provide
Put it
the
down.
summary version, but that is an important detail. There have been many, many, many conversations about this. So when I received on August the 2nd, last Thursday, another proposal, it shows $475,000, then it showed $55,000 separately, and it says, with a footnote, already approved and signed under Addendum 1. That's the $55,000. When I saw that and the way that it was written up, I sent an email back. And I said, are you proposing a total of $475,000 or $530,000? Are you adding the 55 to the 475? And his response back, which you have on that same date, I have clarified with the revised attachment, best I can do for total is $530,000. So I race to the board before I get another email. Commissioners, we started with $405,000, which I thought, quite frankly, should have been truly the upper limits of what this project should cost, incorporating the $55,000 that had previously been approved in that task order. But I do not have any reason to believe, and nor would I recommend a $530,000 expense. I don't believe it's reasonable, and I wouldn't recommend that to the board, but that's what he indicates is the best price that he can do the project for is $530,000. I, to date, have never received, as Mr. Pravat points out, which I had pointed out in writing as well, that I've never received the breakdown of the deliverables that we have been anticipating since back in June when the board voted. We've never gotten that. But we're at a point where we are behind on getting this project started. We should have been well underway with the design by now, with the list of deliverables in hand and a task order to bring back to this board, and I have what you have. A number of different proposals that started at $405,000 and now we're up to $530,000. So I wanted to inform you of that and tell you that I need to get a sewer plant underway.
Any questions for Mr. Harris?
No, Mr. Chairman, I do have one question about, is it possible to rescind the original, vote to rescind the original agreement that we made with him of the $405,000 so that we don't have to, if we choose to back out of this, of working with him on it at all, we can? 'Cause it sounds like to me that it's going to get higher and higher before we ever even get a list of deliverables.
That's a good question for the county attorney.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson, appearing from what we had done at the June 18th meeting in approving it, it appeared that y'all kind of put the two together. If you recall, the RFP went out for general utility services to get 2 engineers. And so that we would have a contract with the 2 engineers, and then as projects came along, we would go between the 2 engineers to do this. And because we had 2 projects going here, that's how it ended up being able to talk to both at the same time. But it appeared that what we were trying to do and approve the overall utility contract kind of got bled into with the 405 number. So whatever we're going to do to rescind this would rescind not only the overall utility contract, but then the $405,000 to go along with it, all in one thing, because we did it in one action. I'm not suggesting that, and y'all need to make that decision, if we do rescind that agreement, do we approve an overall agreement by itself without a task order, which would have been the 405,000, or do we rescind the agreement altogether and leave it to go, and then to approach another engineering firm to be able to handle the project, period? Am I making sense there? Is clear, we need to rescind this, that's the combination, and then you need to decide whether to offer Mr. Darabi just the master overall contract without the addendum, and then move on.
So what kind of time frame does this push us back if we rescind any part of it, even the least amount?
If the board rescinds the previous action, I would ask for authorization to go ahead and begin negotiating with the other engineer, because that's what the statute outlines. That's
You
the
go to
process.
number 2 in that particular phase.
I'm not sure that it may be number 2, but in reality, because we had advertised that we were selecting 2, I would say that we selected number 1 and number 2, and the third one didn't negotiate with us because they were ranked number 3. So I'm not positive on the scoring, but it would be the other engineer.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
what's the customary time frame for getting the deliverables listed? Or let's just say, what was the time frame that the other engineering company got the deliverables back to you for the water plant?
Oh, about a day.
Oh, I was going to say 2.
Yeah, it may have been 2 days. It
So
could have been 2 days.
we're at 51 days waiting for the sewer plant deliverables.
Waiting
at
for
this
the
point.
list.
Right.
But I think because in his mind, the whole time it's been a negotiation, not a, we entered into a price of 405,000. He still won't negotiate.
But he has signed that.
Signed that.
He
He has
signed.
signed that, and we have signed that, so
It's
does it, if we back out, does that put it?
We haven't-
We haven't signed it.
We haven't.
We
signed
haven't,
it.
okay.
No,
No.
we have not signed it.
Just he has signed
signed
that
it.
405,000.
The only thing we have signed was the general agreement
I
The
thought we had
general,
signed
the
something,
general
yeah.
overall agreement.
without
Okay.
a
But,
signature on the
but
task order.
again, because of the way that it appears from the minutes that you passed it, I kind of remember it differently, but the minutes, they were that way. It would be we'd take an action to rescind the combination. That's why I said then you could reinstate just
Part of
the
it.
general, but without the task order.
Okay, makes sense.
If you still wanted Mr. Darabi to continue, under the RFQ that was out there, to be the utility engineer for what other projects we may have.
What if we don't want Mr. Darabi to be involved in this project anymore?
Well, again, rescinding that agreement, the overall master agreement would be fine. We can look at that. We can go back to him and say, what are the problems with these terms? Because I think Mr. Darabi was also looking as a combination, not just as a single to-do, knowing that it would be coming forward because hasn't put it back in the task order in the format that we've requested. So I can only assume, he's not quite getting it,
Understand how you can be in business like that and not get it.
So Mr. Chairman, I guess the question is, do we want to hold his feet to the fire on the 405 and do that? Or do we want to rescind or give him options?
Mr. Hale, I'll answer that one.
Yes.
Holding his feet to the fire on 405 is only going to invite trouble at this point. The better part of valor is, we have not executed what would, quote, be the task order. He has an overall agreement that we can reapprove and leave him there, as sitting there with a contract, but with nothing to do.
Nothing to do.
Nothing to do. And then, which is what I'm recommending that we do, then move on to the number 2 under that particular category to get this particular task order done. Okay? So if you try to enforce him to do for 405, all you're doing is asking for trouble, more delays, more problems, and we're already 51 days into it, as Mr. Sessions noted. We need to cut this loose and move on.
Mr. Chairman, I would entertain a motion to rescind this agreement. If I had my choice, I would say to cut them out completely and just move on to the second.
Okay,
Second,
let me help you with the wording then.
Thank you.
We'll be moving to rescind the action that was taken at the June 18th, 2018 meeting, which included the overall master agreement and a proposed task order of $405,000. And see, that's the problem I had with the wording, that is, as it appears in the minutes, and I missed that. But the proposed task order is what I would do. Did you get that, Eric?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the motion.
Move to rescind the action on June 18, 2018 meeting, which included the overall master agreement and proposed task order of $405,000 with Darabi and Associates.
Thank you.
Second.
That's your motion?
My motion.
I got a second.
A motion by Commissioner Richardson, and a second by Commissioner Fleming. Any further discussion? Hear none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would then ask that the board, pursuant to the statute, authorize me to go ahead and begin negotiating with the other engineering firm, which
Need
is
another
going to be
motion?
North Florida,
Yes.
because they were
I'll make the
ranked
motion.
higher than the
I'll
third
second.
firm.
I got a motion by Commissioner Sessions to authorize negotiation for, I don't know what number, how do I need to word that? What engineer, or number one, number two?
The number two.
It would
To
be,
move
it's
to
going
the-
to be, it's going to be North Florida Professional Services, because
Okay,
they were either number one or number two. I just don't remember which.
North Florida Professional Services. And Mr. Hale, second that? Second by Mr. Hale.
No, it wasn't under a master agreement, but on the task order for the wastewater plant.
Right.
We've already approved the general agreement with them for utilities engineering. This would be for the task order.
All right, any further discussion on it? Hear none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That wraps up that item. Moving
Thank
on.
you.
Thanks, sir. Moving on to item 16, discuss possible board action, authorization to advertise for bids for 2 knuckle boom trucks. Mr. Harris?
Boy, this is interesting. I want to make a few comments, and then I want to just ask that we postpone any consideration until the next meeting, for a couple of reasons. What's happening with these large truck chassis is that the companies, the vendors that build the trucks on these cab and chassis are having difficulty obtaining chassis. The board previously approved the acquisition of these 2 large knuckle boom trucks. And it was a part of a 4-year lease-to-own program, which actually is just a financing mechanism at a lower interest rate. So when we communicated with the company, we learned all of a sudden that no one can get the chassis. And we communicated back and forth with the company, and even communicated with the second company, which was not low bid, to see if they had the cab and chassis or if they were experiencing the same difficulty. Apparently, it's a nationwide problem. So the finance company offered to let us enter into an agreement with them and start paying interest on money that they were going to use to hold the chassis. And I said, how can you hold something that you don't have? When are you going to have the chassis? They said it could be a year. So we did not sign anything to go forward. I said, when you figure out when you're going to have some chassis, come back and talk to us, and we'll go back to the board. So recently, we've had some conversations, and they indicated that they could have the chassis first quarter of next year. And both companies indicated that they were going to have to go up on their rates. I said, well, if that's the case, I've got to go back to the board, get authorization to rebid them, because we don't have authorization to buy these things at a higher price. Well, the company that was low bid started scrambling and called and said, whoa, hold everything. We'll make our original bid price good. And we thought that that was going to work. So when they started putting the paperwork together, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, I wanted to see it in writing. When the details came back, it was about an $11,000 increase because of the finance charges. And the reason for that was they want us to order the truck today. The finance company comes in and puts a placeholder on those chassis. They want us to pay interest on that money until we get the trucks. It cost $11,000. I said no. So today, up until about 4 o'clock, we had several conversations. That company, the original low bid, is going to talk to them. I said, it isn't our problem. You know, it's a company problem, it's a vendor problem. You figure out how you can eat $11,000. We didn't create the problem, and I'm not paying for something that we don't have. So they're going to talk amongst themselves, the company is, and see if they can figure out how to absorb $11,000. If they can't do it, then we will come back and ask for authorization to bid, and we'll just go through this exercise again. I am convinced, however, that it doesn't make any difference who it is, who the vendor is. There will be a delay on these cab and chassis. That's just the way that it's going right now. Unless we can find someone that has one in stock where there was a cancellation on an order. But for now, I'd say let's just deal with this maybe on the next agenda. Their hope is that they can have something figured out over the next 2 weeks.
All right. Any questions? Moving on to item 17, discuss possible board action, any items associated with the water or the wastewater plant?
I don't have any others. I appreciate the board authorizing us to go ahead and begin bidding various components, because we will have lots of them, and this way I don't have to come back. You know, that was on the consent agenda, but I don't have to come back now and get authorization every time we need to bid something. What I will say is that we are prepared to go to bid on the test well at the water treatment plant, which has to occur first. You pump the water then and do some modeling, and it's all about volumes and water quality, et cetera. You produce a lot of data and then work from there on your design and permitting. So we are currently prepared to go to bid on the test wells that need to take place out there at the water treatment plant. And we're about to negotiate with an engineer for engineering for our sewer treatment plant.
Think you can wrap that part of it up in less than 50 days?
I promise you. I hope to be back here at the next meeting with a task order. That's the plan. With the detail on deliverables as well. That's all I've got on that.
That's all you got on that? All right, moving on to item 18, additional agenda items. We've got 3. The first additional agenda item was authorization for Suwannee Quarterback Club to utilize the vacant lot to the east side of Paul Anchor Stadium for visitor parking during 2018 Suwannee varsity football home games.
Mr. Chairman, I told them that if the board does approve this, that we'll have to have some type of written agreement that the county attorney can put together, and at the very least, we're going to be sensitive to any conflicts with other major events downtown, like Christmas on the Square or anything else, where we'll need that piece of property. But this is the vacant property where the Nettie Basin School was. So if the board wants to entertain that, and then Mr. Pravat and I can put an agreement together.
I'm fine with it. I know we talked about it last year, and I thought they were going to try to utilize it last year, and they never did for whatever reason, but I think it'd be good.
I think they couldn't get the help that they needed. You know, this club is not like other clubs, not unlike other clubs, where you usually end up with the same handful of people that do everything,
Yeah.
and the majority just attend. So I think maybe they suffered some of that.
Yeah.
Also, to add to that, last year they was going to waive the fee for the ad that the Board of County Commissioners have. I also want to put that in there. They did call me, and I forgot. When I called you several times, it slipped my mind to mention it. But I would like to add that in there too. When they get ready for the ad, they call Mandy, get in touch with Mandy, with the ad that they could waive that fee for the Board of County Commissioners for the ad. I think it's $125, $100. For utilizing that parking space.
Bat, did you get all of that?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Any questions, concerns? Those the wishes of the board.
Motion approved.
Second.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Fleming, second by Commissioner Richardson. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, authorization to apply, no, item number 2 is authorization to apply to DEP, Florida Recreational Development Assistant Program projects that provide recreational enhancement opportunities for children, grant with matching funds. Mr. Scott.
As y'all recall, last year, or 2 years ago, the legislature set aside some money for unique abilities, proper projects. That grant had no match, and as you recall, out of $3 million, we got $1 million of it locally. This is the same program, but they've changed the rules, probably because of us, but the project has changed. We just got information just recently about the details, and we're not ready to know what project we want to do yet, but the grant's going to be due before your next commission meeting. It is a 50-50 match. If we move forward with it after y'all approve, if y'all approve it and we move forward, I'll find the money and let you know that before we accept the grant on the match. We can always reject it later if we choose to, but in order to make us be able to have us be able to write the grant, we need approval to move forward. And as we know what direction we're going with that, then I'll make sure I tell you that as we know how we're moving forward. Just a short turnaround on the information we got from about the grant, and it's due before the next commission meeting. And normally we don't do it this way. We know what we're doing before we ask permission, which sounds a little backwards, but it is what it is. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Question, Mr. Chair. Greg, I didn't see this until after the EDC thing today, but on the grant application itself, does it require a resolution from the board to be placed in there, or just approval from the board?
Approval and the resolution in the grant. When we submit the package, that's what
Resolution for the grant or to apply for the grant?
for the grant.
Okay. Well, I mean, looking at what's in the packet,
Well, whatever's in the packet is what we got to have.
okay, well, I don't, it doesn't have anything about authorization in this, you know, to apply for the grant. And
Well-
then I would understand that there's a requirement that you have the one-to-one.
Right.
And then you have to put it in the comprehensive plan, which you have to do for the FERDAPs anyway, right?
Well, you get more points if you do.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, we need to change the resolve part in the format of the resolution instead of signing the one that's in the packet.
Okay.
Okay? To let you know that there'll be actually 3 paragraphs instead of 1 paragraph as part of the resolution portion of it. The first part will be that you authorize the chairman and the county administrator as his designee to be able to sign the applications for their FERDAP grant for the projects that provide recreational enhancements and opportunities for children. Second paragraph will then be changed to be able to say that you recognize that it's a $1 for $1 match under any of the FERDAP grants. And the third paragraph will then be to include that Suwannee County recognizes that it will be included in its next 5-year capital improvement schedule as portion of the FERDAP grant requirements.
Very well
Get that,
said.
Eric? Thank you. That's the new.
It's on the video.
That's the new paragraph 1, 2, and 3.
You can't go back and refer to it.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Bat, could you repeat that, please?
Not a prayer,
I don't know what to do.
not a prayer.
It was on video. We'll get it right.
Well, I don't know, as my sister-in-law said, I do have my smartwatch on. I could try it, you know?
I was kidding, Mr. Spat. I believe we have it on video.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, one question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Scott, do you have any ideas about what you might want to do at this point?
We've got
Do you
several.
want to share them?
We've got several ideas.
You want to share any of them?
We've got 3 potential locations. We've got the Sportsplex being one. The Douglas would be another one, and then the Lurville site would be another one.
Which one?
Lurville,
Lurville.
new part there.
What's the wishes of the board, if there's no other questions?
I move that we approve with the changes that council suggested. Just as he stated it.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Richardson, second by Commissioner Sessions. Any further discussion? Hear none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. Thanks, sir.
And again, I apologize for not having more information, but it is what it is. Thank you.
No, sir, no problem. And number 3, additional agenda items is approval of a memorandum of agreement between the State of Florida Department of Economic Opportunity and Suwannee County regarding the terms and conditions of the implementation of the Rural Area of Opportunity, formerly known as Rural Area of Critical Concern, Economic Concern designation. Mr. Harris?
Chairman, this, we previously brought the issue of the designation of the board, recognizing that it occurred, but they wanted us to send in a form. There was a problem with this previously. It was, I think it was stuck in an internet virus or something. So when they sent us a letter indicating that they needed this form signed, we had to tack it on as an additional item. But while I don't see it in here, I had just asked Mandy about a moment ago, if the board approves the signature, chairman's signature, I'd ask that you approve one of our standard resolutions authorizing his signature. I don't see that language in here, but in such event that it might be required, it would save us coming back to do that. So if there is a motion to approve, I would ask that you incorporate that resolution as well, authorizing chairman's signature.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to approve? Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Sessions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fleming. Any discussion? Hear none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Moving on to item 19, public concerns and comment. Anyone wishing to speak, make their way to the podium. Name, address for the record. Seeing none. Move on to administrator comments and information.
Got a couple quick ones, Mr. Chairman. One, we now have a list in the DOT's Transportation Improvement Plan that lists our $300,000 award from the state this past year that can be applied toward our rail crossing that has to be relocated out of the Catalyst site. That funding can be added to the funding that CDBG allowed us to use after we have completed our rail spur. So again, my hope is that we can cover all of that expense on the crossing itself. We will have to build that road to the north up to 50th, but at least if we don't have to incur $1 million expense or more with CSX, that would be nice. On that rail crossing, what an interesting dilemma CSX has created. In their quest to downsize and lay off or retire everyone who we had ever dealt with at CSX associated with this project,
The entire department.
everyone, there's no one left that we had started dealing with on the rail spur or the crossing. Most recently, I've spoken to dozens of people and finally have determined that CSX plans to subcontract the engineering work out associated with the crossing. and we will be receiving some breakdown on projected expense for that. I don't know if that will be standalone or if it will incorporate not only the engineering and design, but also the construction that they will perform within the CSX right-of-way for the crossing itself. But I am anticipating that to come back sometime soon, and I'll bring it to the board when it does. In fact, I'll just tell you, I'm kind of excited about the fact that CSX is subcontracting the engineering work out. This might get expedited. The rail spur itself, Mr. Pravat's aware, the chairman's aware, others may be aware. I think I mentioned this in the last meeting. It's behind schedule. It needs to get back on schedule. We have a customer out there that anticipates, or their need is that we be finished with our part of this thing by the end of September, because there's other work that has to occur with Matco and others. They're the primary supplier of materials that Matco will be facilitating. Has been to my office several times and visited. They're really pushing hard, and we may have more discussion on this soon, but I've communicated with the contractor that we need to have this thing completed. I have made multiple requests for a schedule that indicates that our timeline is going to be met. I don't have the schedule yet, but I will say that the contractor, the representative with the contractor, has been very good about calling me regularly and informing me of what they are doing out there. But my hope still remains that they're finished and out of there end of September, or at least finished. I don't care if their equipment's still out there, but they need to be finished with the project. So that's where we are on the rail spur. Briefly on the MSBU's, I know some of you have been questioned about that. I'd indicated before that, first of all, we needed several of them so that we can get competitive bidding and competitive finance costs. The action that you took earlier this evening on the consent agenda that authorizes us to advertise an RFP for financial services is for the purposes of procuring the services of one of the companies that actually handles assembling the cost per parcel of those assessment programs, and also making the arrangements and handling the procurement of the financial or the lending services that are going to be required. I'm going to give you an example. Most of you are familiar with this company, and this is simply an illustration. PFM, which you probably see they have their vendor tables out at the FAC meetings that you attend on a regular basis. They're always handing packages out. I've brought information from them to the board previously. They also handle interim or short-term financing at very, very low interest rates for local governments. Those types of companies are in the financial services business, and they can provide more to us than us simply going out and advertising to try to procure a bank with a low interest rate. So that's going to be a good thing for us. The authorization you gave us earlier, we'll get that. We've already got the draft put together to get that on the streets. As soon as we do and get that back, we'll start put the pieces together, because there's so many pieces associated with these MSBU's for road improvements. And I'll bring that back to the board for consideration once we narrow those proposals down for your consideration. That's where we are on those right now. And Mr. Chairman, I think that's probably all that I have for you today, unless you have any questions.
Any questions?
Board members' requests or comments? Mr. Richardson?
The only thing I've got is a couple of meetings ago, we were given some information about some additional troopers that were hired into Suwannee County, and 4 additional ones. Is that correct? Is that correct? 4 additional? So there's 5 total?
These are Ken Weaver, Suwannee County resident, representing the sheriff. There's 5 positions allocated to Suwannee County by the Florida Highway Patrol. All 5 positions are filled. Traditionally, over the last 30 years, the Board of County Commissioners and the sheriff have provided speed measuring device radars to the troopers. I have come before the board numerous times as a Florida Highway Patrol trooper done this. Mr. Hale, one of the young troopers came to Mr. Hale, and he was able to go before the board. So one has been bought months ago.
Yes.
We've got the other 4 positions that are filled by local troopers that are living here in this county. They need these speed enforcement devices to provide a safe motoring environment to the public in this county. So I was asked by the Florida Highway Patrol to get the information up and come before you all. So I gave you the information for those devices and the cost. It was a government contract cost.
Okay. The reason why I bring that up, Mr. Chairman, is I'd just like to see us move forward on something to get these troopers dealt with. We have enough accidents around here, and I don't mean to police our residents all the time, but when you've got, I mean, it's bad enough on our back roads. We tire our county guys up running on the state roads, on the main roads, when we've got the back roads that are basically left unattended, and the back roads is where they're running up and down. So I think if we can get our troopers more involved in the main roads, we can allow the deputies to get more on these back roads and make them a little bit safer. So at some point, I'd like to see us move forward with that. I don't know exactly what the process is, but I know Mr. Harris would.
Put it on the agenda,
Okay.
put it on the next.
Well, I've got the information. I've had it for
Yeah.
a couple weeks now, and I had planned on Monday, which starts our budget workshops.
Okay.
I had relayed to Mr. Weaver and whoever else I had spoke to about it, that's when I had planned on bringing it to the
Okay.
board's attention. We did buy one last year when the individual brought it to me. The only thing I asked him was, the next time he brought it to me, is try to bring it to me in a budget year,
Yeah, that's right.
before the budget year, so we weren't looking for additional funding for it. So if we were going to do 4 at one time, it was my preference to try to do it at budget.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Just hope he doesn't bring it to you on the side of the road.
And I figured at that time too, if it's something that we've been doing historically for 30 years, at a point in the budget, we need to just go ahead and to take consideration of maybe putting it in the sheriff's budget and leaving it there. And then it'll be up to you to renew it when they need to be renewed.
Does that come with 6 speeding violation waiver cards?
It better.
A year?
He's leaving you out, Jim.
6 per year?
I see, I hear.
The last county attorney that I stopped, he asked me the same question, and I just told him to press hard, there was 5 copies.
That's good.
Is that all you had, Mr. Richardson? Mr. Fleming?
I don't have anything today.
Mr. Hale?
I don't have anything.
Mr. Sessions?
Not tonight.
I don't have anything either. Just need a motion to adjourn, fellas.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Thank you all for coming out.
Adjourn.
Well done.